Steve Brand here. I'm talking with Yosh Rozen from PartRunner. Yosh, why don't you tell me a little bit about the company before we sort of get into the bulk of the conversation?
Sure. So, Steve, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me here. And I'll let you know a little bit about what the company does. So, PartRunner is an on-demand, same-day delivery service for construction suppliers. So, think about an Uber-like network of truckers where we help construction companies, primarily suppliers, move material, parts, and equipment to their customers on demand.
Okay, that's a great, concise way of saying what you do. I want you to go backwards and tell me, where did this all come from? Where did the idea come from? How did it start?
So I was actually finishing my master's at Northeastern University, and I had the opportunity to work on an idea for a few months. And having some logistics background, I had a background in industrial engineering. I had worked at a few construction companies, and I always was indirectly involved with a problem. And the problem being the time wasted and the inefficiencies that a poor material handling and distribution causes at job sites and construction sites and for overall, just the overall productivity. And I like the problem. I researched a lot about the problem when I was introduced to it, and I decided to do something about it. So it all began. I had read the Lean Startup, and it was all about releasing a first MVP. So it was like, well, hey, why isn't there an Uber and Grubhub-like company in the construction space? So, like any other entrepreneur, I rented a pickup. I rented a pickup out of U-Haul, and I went to a few building suppliers, and I started doing a few deliveries. And I noticed that there was a need because people in the space were requesting deliveries. But that was kind of my first ever MVP, and that's how it all started, really. It was just like, hey, this is an idea. Let's throw something out there. We did a lot of research on it, and saw the opportunity.
So you said you did a lot of research. What does that mean? Like what, you got the pickup, you did the first job. Like what kind of research did you do?
Before that first trip, right? It was, okay, well, let's quantify how many times are people at job sites and construction sites and commercial sites missing parts? Like, is this first a problem to begin with? And what's being done right now? And is there something addressing this problem? And then how big is the problem? So we did some preliminary research. Now, it wasn't like hours upon hours and months upon months of research. We researched for a few weeks. We asked a few people in the space, both on the supplier side and on the receiver side, which are subcontractors. And we said, okay, well, let's test something out. And that's how it started.
So you use the term lean. Obviously, a lot of us in the space do
Yeah.
lean startup approach. So how did you learn about lean? How did you learn that methodology?
So so the Lean Startup, right, is a book that was pretty influential to me 2.5 years when I read it, 2.5, almost 3 years. The Lean methodology is both a practice in industrial engineering to make systems and processes the most efficient that you can, right? There's like from the 5 whys to the fishbone diagram to like really making and identifying from like a root cause analysis as to what is the problem that you're trying to solve, what's the system that revolves around that problem, and then how do you make it more efficient. So at the end of the day, what PartRunner does, we're solving an efficiency problem, right? It's all about timing, it's all about distance, it's all about vehicle capacities and specific constraints. And ultimately, the value add is the productivity. It's the efficiency that we bring to companies by delivering whatever we're delivering on demand within 90 minutes or less.
So do you think that your sort of the searching for that information about the industry came true to you? Did the research that you did it actually come to fruition when you started doing it?
So the research was half half talking to people in the space and half like actually researching things. And it was a combination of both in terms of almost like an initial customer discovery per se. And initial, like, what are the pains that this industry has? And when you start asking those questions, right, you're dealt with like 15 problems, right? There's like, the world is full of problems. We just decided to solve this one particularly. Now, could have been another one. Definitely. Is this the only thing that I'll ever do? No, right? But right now, and for PartRunner, we decided to specifically solve this problem.
So during the journey, especially in the early phases, there's a lot you had to learn to set up the company. How do you learn? And I'm not just about the industry itself. How do you learn about technology, software, all sorts of things that make a company function from the early phases to where you are now?
It's called, look, in all honesty, at the end of the day, is you hit the ground running, and it's about hustling. Like, you gotta hustle. Like, if I had to put it in one word, what we did was, and what we're doing is, we are hustling. So it's not like, you don't stop when you can't figure something out, or you don't stop because you don't know something. You just have to make it work. So one way or another. So there's different ways to make things work, right? You got to ask questions. You got to surround yourself with people that know more than you, right? You have to have some sort of business savviness. And if you don't have it, surround yourself with people that do, right? And there's like, for me, the most important thing in the beginning was an MVP. Like, is there something out here? Before the legal entity was there, before the accounting systems was there, before a lot of the different things that you do need to run a company were there. For me, it was more like, hey, let's do an MVP. Let's see if there's something here, right? And then, because you can get lost with so many things about running a company that you never start because it's overwhelming. So,
once
and it's very different that you're doing. Sorry.
What you get an MVP, you sort of prototyping the sort of the model that you've got, and then you got to like scale it, right? So how did you learn about creating the platform? Like, did you hire someone? Did you read about it online, or like to create the sort of the technology to sort of enable what you're doing? Right? How did you learn about that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Steve. I think it's the partners that you choose. There's a lot of solo founders out there, and I like applaud them. I think this journey is really a team journey, and it's really the partners that you surround yourself with. So you start asking like, okay, well, I need somebody that will help in X, Y, and Z, right? In operations, in technology, right? And being limited, you can't do it all. So you got to surround yourself with people that know it, and that they have some sort of like, they believe in the vision that you are seeing. And that's when I first got, I talked about with my two co-founders, Dan and Tarun. And at the time I had pitched them the idea. I had already ran a few pilots. We were already kind of in the initial phases, and you surround with people that know how to build that technology, right? And there's multiple ways, right? You can build it in-house, you can outsource it, there's 10 ways on doing things. It's just, at the end of the day, you have to do it and go with it and run with it. And then evolve it, change it, pivot, and be highly adaptable. And that's the way.
Is there something along the journey that you wish you knew when you started that you now know?
Well, it's always easier to start something when when it's like you have the experience that you gain. I think just being very conscious as to, like, don't get super overwhelmed with like, I need to have everything in place before I start something or before I do something, right? It's like a little bit of everything. There has to be the right amount of risk, the right amount of just like go for it attitude, and definitely knowing the things to build the business, right? Like unit economics is super important. and customer feedback is like the number one thing, right? And learning from, I guess, also not being overwhelmed by so many different people that you'll talk to, right? And you'll always have advisors and you'll always have mentors, and there's just so much out there. So really filtering that information from the very beginning is helpful, and knowing that it's normal, and knowing that learning from people that have done things that you want to do is also very helpful. It's you're not alone, and it's not really a solo journey per se. It's a
So
and
how do
a
you how do you
yeah.
deal with competing? Like I've heard the term mentor whiplash, and I know you've been through a few accelerators. Like how do you weigh the competing opinions about what you should do, and then you have to do it, and they're not the same information?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's like you just have to filter a lot of information and take the decisions with like probably you and your co-founders, if you have co-founders. If you're a solo founder, maybe it's with your executive team or your advisory board. But at the end of the day, until you have a board of directors, it kind of falls on you, right? You're steering the ship. Me and my team, my Dan Tarun, and my initial team right now, we're steering the ship, and we know really the inside and out of the company, right? We know the inside and out. So you just have to kind of try to digest what people are saying, take a breather, discuss it internally, and then take a decision with whatever you feel is best.
Do you have a board of directors now?
Currently, no.
No. And there a reason for that?
It depends on like what's like for us. It was until we get a little bit bigger and more stable, we'll probably bring a board in. There's different stages where you is more convenient to bring a board of directors, and we're just not at that stage right now.
Yeah, yeah. So you went to a few accelerators, correct?
Yes.
And how helpful was that, or what did they help you with?
Well, it's a whole world that you really don't like. The whole startup ecosystem is a gigantic world that might seem overwhelming to start. Like, where do you start? What the hell is it to be an entrepreneur, to start something of your own? And I think where accelerators help you is they help you in mentorship, they help you in like they help you in guidance, they through a process and a system, they direct an entrepreneur from an early stage to maybe up until like a growth stage, and how to navigate those different ups and downs in those different stages in a company's life cycle. So I think an accelerator helps the entrepreneur kind of navigate the seas, the uncharted seas in the beginning.
Do you feel that it actually did help you, or did it just slow you down because you had to like play by their rules and their
No,
schedule?
no, it definitely helped us because it's like you don't know what you don't know. And that's where accelerators can add a lot of value. They've done it 150 times every single year, so they've managed a system and a process that you're very new to. So it's like riding a bicycle. They ride bicycles every single day, and you're just getting on, and you're just learning how to balance your body in the bike, and they've already done it, so they kind of guide you. Now you're the one that has to pedal, you're the one that has to construct the bike that works, but they've at least done it already.
But can you share with me your biggest mistake to date, and how did you get out of that?
And look, I think that's always a tough question because it's like you're always solving problems, and there's always things that are happening, and there's always like the typical of, well, if I hadn't committed that mistake, I wouldn't have learned the lesson that I did.
Right.
It's like, but it's there's a lot of challenges in the company from really positioning the company a with a very clear value add from the unit economics, how you're going to do sales, hiring. So I think there's not one specific thing that I can think of right now.
Yeah. Are you having fun at it?
Yeah, look, it's exciting. There's a lot of emotions consistently thrown at you. But look, at the end of the day, and this is like, it's like the crazy people are the ones that are changing the world, right? And it's like, if you want to be a change maker and you get inspired by creating value in some sort of way, shape, or form, however small, medium, or big it is, because then that's exciting. And the other thing is that I think for me, right, being an entrepreneur is not chasing just that freaking huge, massive outcome, right? It's creating value at a certain degree, whether that value is 1x, 5x, 10x, 30x, 100x, right? And some, and that's what being an entrepreneur is. It's not, it just kind of, that's my definition, right?
Yeah, when we first started, before I even turned on the recording device, you said it was ups and downs and ups and downs. And can you share with me a story of the biggest up you had? Like, this is amazing. I'm so glad I'm doing this. Was there a moment you just like took a big deep breath? Maybe this is going to work.
Every time there's a new customer, right? It proves that there's somebody out there in this world that is accepting, agreeing, and validating what you're busting your ass for. And that's the creation of value, right? When whatever you're doing, if it's a product, service, or whatever you're doing, they say, you know what? You're making my life this much easier, this much better. And that's creation of value. And that's the oil. That's that's the gas in the car.
So let's, if we go back to the early days of the company,
we're still in the early days, Steve. I have to say, it might not be an idea on a napkin, but we're still in the early days.
What advice would you give to an early stage entrepreneur before they sort of, do a nosedive into the pool?
Look, I would say, and it's not that I did this, right? It's like you learn it as you go. But I would say I think you have to have like a pretty high emotional standing, right? You have to know how to manage risk and know that it's not an easy journey. Know the opportunity costs, give yourself some sort of time frame. And if you have the bandwidth in your life and you can take that risk, go for it. Right? That's what I would suggest. But know the opportunity costs, know the bandwidth, know if you are in a position in your life that you can take that. And if and it's just about going with your gut feeling. But so that decision is very personal, right? That decision is like any other big decision or big change that you do in your life. If you don't do it yourself, nobody will ever convince you to do otherwise.
Yeah.
Nobody can convince anybody to be an entrepreneur. It's either you decide to be one or you don't.
How did you, you got out of school, you got a degree, and guess all your colleagues and friends were going off for jobs. How did you decide to go this way versus that way?
These are tough questions, Steve.
And that's my job,
And look, I think when I put things in the opportunity cost and in the balance, right? I had finished, I did a bachelor's and a master's in industrial engineering. I had always loved entrepreneurship. People ask me, hey, would you ever work for a corporate company? The answer is yes. Like, I think it would be foolish to say not. Like, for sure I would. But it was just a path that I wanted to take and that I decided to take, that maybe not, you thread the path that's not paved. And you go for it. And it was kind of a decision that I took after thinking about it for a while. And I didn't have too many responsibilities at the time. It's not, I'm not, it's however many responsibilities one person has at a given moment is also the bandwidth that they have to, their risk bandwidth and stuff like that. So like, in a certain sense, why not, right? That was kind of the mentality. And it's been already 2.5 years, and now close to 3 now.
Yeah, it's getting there.
But yeah, so far so good. It's like you surround yourself with a good team, with good advisors, you create value, and you always know that it's like I've always said that also working in a startup and doing a startup is like if you're doing 100 MBAs,
Yeah.
but in a very short span.
Ask you another question. I'm going to sort of close it off soon because I know you need to get going. But a lot of people say that you don't really need to go to college to learn how to be an entrepreneur. Do you think your college experience was worth it? And like, what kind of value did it provide to you to get to where you are now and what you're doing now?
Well, I think it did. I think for me personally, I think a lot of people, this is a very personal question, and this can be addressed and there's no right or wrong answer, right? People have been very successful without college degrees, but there's also a lot of people that have been very successful with college degrees. I think for me it was good. It was great having that experience. I learned tremendously. Industrial engineering was very broad, and I also did a master's in engineering management, which gave me the business perspective of engineering. It gave me an analytical mindset, and it gave me a process and on how to do certain things, which I don't think I would have gained otherwise, or at least that was a good experience.
Yeah. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, Yosh. I appreciate it. It was very insightful, very helpful. I love to hear about people's journeys. Love to ask hard questions. I don't want to make it any easy for you, but I wish you great success as you move forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Same to you.